everybody. Welcome to the morning show. We're coming to you this morning on Channel 9 on WJOP-LP Newburyport, FM 96.3. And we're also coming to you on our YouTube channel at Newburyport Community Media, ncmhub.org. I'm your host, Mary Jacobsen, and I'm just delighted to welcome this morning's guest. Susan Reynolds is here. Susan has over 20 years of experience in digital well-being, mindfulness, and youth leadership. From 1985 to 2003, she was an English and social studies teacher, a curriculum developer, and the first director of academic technology at the Fenn School in Concord, Mass. In 2019, she co-founded LookUp.Live, a youth-led nonprofit social venture dedicated to helping young people thrive in a digital world. They aim to discover, empower, and mobilize youth leaders who are taking action to raise awareness, inspire, and design a healthy, more inclusive, and equitable digital world. She's here today to talk about the urgent and growing issue of digital media's role in a growing mental health crisis among vulnerable youth. So Susan, first of all, welcome. And thank you so much for taking time to visit the morning show.
Oh, absolutely. It's so nice to be here again. It's, reflecting back, I think I saw you in October of 2020.
That's
so
right.
Thinking back, right? How much has changed.
That's
in the landscape.
right. And, when you came on that show, we were talking about the overarching mission of your organization, simply to help young people create a better balance in their lives between
Right.
screen time and, what shall we call it, real world time. But a lot has happened in the meantime, especially the amplification of some of the issues that I know you're now concerned about that have to do with mental health and young people and the role social media plays in that. We started hearing more about that, or at least I did anyway, after Frances Haugen's very well-known testimony about Facebook in front of Congress. And that brought the attention to a lot of people that I think simply like myself hadn't been attending to it as closely as perhaps we should have been. But I get your mailings, fortunately, and I read some truly troubling statistics in a mailing that LookUp.Live sent out earlier this year. And I was hoping that we might start with you framing the problem and sharing with us some of the statistics and data that underscore just how urgent and dangerous the situation currently is, Susan.
Right. So it's really widespread. And, you can look at the issue around mental health with the extremes, the ultimate of youth suicide and the impact that living in a digital world can have on that, not necessarily the cause, but the amplification of situations. So what we've seen is when we're looking at cyberbullying, we're seeing then when we look at students, youth who have committed suicide, 38% of them report being cyberbullied. So, there's a correlation, not necessarily causative, not fitting sort of the media ideal. It opens youth up to more harm. So, as we've seen, and I think you and I have talked about that LGBTQ plus youth, 60% have experienced hate speech and incivility online, and the pieces of the ways that the algorithms work has contributed to this. We've started to hear about what the metaverse is going to do, particularly in the LGBTQ community, and so discussions about that. So it's a call to arms in the harms, but the one that those are the extremes. But I think the most startling data was finally having causative connection between Instagram and adolescent girls' mental health, right? That a third of the girls who use social media, who use Instagram, suffer a mental health side effect of that, whether it's low self-esteem, body dysmorphia, eating disorders. And I think I bring that to light because that's across the board, right? And somebody can't sort of sit back and say, well, that's an extreme case. No, this is not an extreme case. And when we have sat around on casual Zoom calls with our youth leaders, amazingly, they themselves who are taking action, who are very involved in their communities, strong academics, every single one of them talks about being impacted by Instagram, talking specifically about the ways that photos are filtered, and how you're constantly seeing these images and comparing yourself to a curated, filtered image. And even when you know that's what you're doing, they talked about that the eating disorders among their peers is just proliferated, and boys too. That boys are suffering from this, working out, going to the gym, trying to have the physique that they're seeing. So it's continuing, and it's continuing to escalate. And we put in the issues of the pandemic. And the other really interesting thing about mental health and what people are saying is because of the time on screens and the time during the pandemic away from people, that students are having a very hard time having casual conversation, sitting next to somebody in class and actually striking up a conversation. And it's even correlating it to, well, if I haven't met them on social media, I feel sort of weird saying hi to them.
It's sad, isn't it? It really is. It's like, a monster that just grew out of control, with a lot of things contributing to it.
Sure.
I was curious, Susan, is this phenomenon that you're describing with this connection between social media and youth mental health, is this something that is predominantly true in the United States, or is this, to your knowledge, a global phenomenon?
Well, I believe it's fully a global phenomenon. When we can talk about regulation, but there's, the regulation attempts for children and safety, and on, preventing online harms, is definitely global. But one way that I can speak to it specifically is we right now are interviewing finalists for our grant recipients. We look up calls for solutions to the issues that we're talking about. And we get applications and then interview them. And so we're interviewing a group from Spain who's talking about possibly making a documentary and going into the backside of an influencer's life and the impact of the algorithms and the impact on mental health. They have a 21-day challenge. We have a student in Australia applying with his own solutions to mental health. Students from Canada and the UK and the Philippines. So it is really widespread. Yeah,
that's a very diverse sampling of countries that are experiencing
yes, and actually, and we have a whole organization, a sort of a branch, satellite branch, LookUp India. Run by youth there, pretty independently, and very involved in that and working. So yes, unfortunately, it's not an isolated situation.
But it also means that you can launch a global effort, which is really important. And you have launched a global effort. So,
right.
And that means you have more young minds across the planet working on trying to come up with solutions. So that strikes me as a strength of your organization and the outreach that you have, because you can get creative solutions coming from all around the world. Right. One of the things that in one of your mailings, I came across the phrase, and I just wanted you to talk a little bit more about what it means and the impact it has. Quantified popularity. Now, we all went to high school, and we know there's the cool kids and the popular kids, and then there's the rest of us, but nobody sent out a report documenting who the popular kids were and how many of them there were. We didn't have, and so I'd imagine it would have been very painful if there had been metrics attached to popularity. So I was hoping that you could say a little bit about the meaning of quantified popularity in social media and the impact that having a metric has on young people.
Sure. So I think you'd also asked me, do people talk, do youth talk about it that way? No, they don't really talk about it that way. But when you explain it, there's the nodding of the head. But it's just evolved an unintended consequence. And you think it's an economic model too. The more likes and followers you have, the more valuable you are. And if we look at celebrities and influencers, they hit 1 million followers and they have a bigger brand deal with different products and can make more money. So that's out there. but yes, that rush of all of a sudden getting all these likes and followers on your Instagram, on your TikTok, sort of triggers in the brain. Well, this is my affirmation. This is people like me. Yes, I'm popular. I'm part of the in crowd, but it's not really like that. That's the danger. And one instance, in talking with reading research about a young woman, is TikTok videos, and so we'll get, because of the way the algorithms work that is not clearly defined, you can all of a sudden just get so many views of a video. But what happens is then, well, that was provocative. Maybe I'll be a little more provocative and a little more provocative. And then the other harm in that is not knowing what to do with that type of sexual attention at such a young age. So it's the more likes and followers you have, the better you feel about yourself, that you're included in part of the group, until it goes too far. And then, if you don't have the likes and followers, feeling like who you are is connected to that, which has nothing to do with popularity or your real relationships or your real social community, but it's causing incredible amount of harms and distress, especially in younger adolescents.
It's a real toxic brew, and it's hitting people at an age when they won't necessarily have the defenses that we all need to deal with ups and downs in popularity and just swings of mood in every day. So it strikes me as just very, very challenging. Well, I'm curious to find out, Susan, your view. Do you see this destructive downside to the digital revolution as simply a mirror held up to already present hateful and discriminatory attitudes that are perhaps more rampant in our culture than we thought? Or have certain aspects of social media unleashed a new beast, so to speak, new forms of hatred and bullying and cruelty?
Well, I believe that it's the latter, that the actual development and design of the social media, of different technologies, of the algorithms and the way they play out, really has created more divisiveness and more acceptance of hate speech or incivility. That it's more, it's just sort of, well, that's just the way it is. That we live in this world. But I think a really specific example is the YouTube algorithm. And there's a podcast called Down the Rabbit Hole, which follows somebody watching YouTube who starts watching self-help videos. But the way that the YouTube algorithms work is they want to get a reaction out of you so that you stay online. Sort of that fear factor and that shock factor and that, oh my gosh. So the algorithm sends you a viewpoint a little more extreme, and then a little more extreme, so that this particular participant actually talked about going all the way over to becoming a QAnon believer, from sort of a mid-range college student who was sort of not real satisfied with his life, and it ended up at that. So I think because extremes grab our attention, the algorithms are designed to create the extremes, because we are living in this attention economy where our attention is a financial gain. So that's just one example. And I think even in reading right now about the Russia-Ukraine crisis and the misinformation and the ability to spread misinformation quickly to so many people, that really does come from the social media and actually the bots. The information that's coming that isn't even coming from human beings. It's coming from the algorithm design and programming.
It's as if we're living in a science fiction dystopia, that we've unleashed some forces that we don't fully understand, And yet they're very powerful, and they get a grip on us because what you're describing sounds like there's kind of an addiction that is triggered. And with other forms of addiction, whether it's drugs or alcohol, you need more to get the same
Sure.
kind of high. And of course, the likes, that's just the little bit of attention, or it's a little dopamine surge in your brain. And then you need more extreme, and it's monetized as well by the people who run the social media companies. And so, oh my goodness. So, so I know, Susan, we've been outlining, we just touched the surface, I think, of the problem, but nonetheless, these are clearly urgent issues. But I know that a foundational principle of LookUp.Live is to ask and listen to young people about their ideas to try and help and fix things regarding issues that are of ultimate concern to them, because they affect their lives directly and immediately, and often negatively. So what are you hearing from youth themselves? What are they advocating for to transform the digital world into one that is healthier and more accepting of youth of any race, class, body type, gender, sexual orientation, or ability, so that everybody feels welcome, represented, and safe?
Sure. Well, I think a whole variety of youth are working on different things. One is there's a new organization designed with kids in mind. It was put together, it's a coalition put together by Fair Play, which is an adult advocacy group. But what we find with our youth is they're designed with kids in mind. So we have a master's student, Iska, in Italy, who is working with youth to design the social media they would like to see. So it comes from design first, and designs that are non-addictive, right, and then are non-harmful. And the goal is actually to bring those all together and bring those to legislation, right? So helping the youth advocates who have ideas, bringing them together with legislators. For example, Blumenthal and Blackburn, two senators, just put the Kids Act, really put the bill forward. And so our youth have met with Senator Markey's office, senator out of Massachusetts, who's been working on this for a very long time. So opportunities like that. We have a group, Emma and Eliza, who are working on Technically Politics. So they're collecting stories and putting those into films, again, so that they can then introduce their ideas to the advocates, to the litigators, to the adult organizations that are working on these podcasts. So Shivani has, it's called Gen Z Digital Decalogue, and she interviews all the other youth advocates that are working on things. Some are really Instagram campaigns around positive. One girl, Disha, Positivity 101. So really looking at the mindful use. Others are inspiring, and your mental health matters, really positive mental health campaigns, bringing to light, you don't need a curated photo. So really, I think education and awareness. We have another group who really wants to get to students when they're young, 5th to 8th graders. And how do you make in real life activities as fun as gaming, right? And scrolling on YouTube, really looking at ways to do that. So those are some of them. The really other, we have a partnership with the Social Dilemma, the Impact team, in continuing to work on different ways to spread the message. And so we have they are hosting one of our grant awards, this Social Dilemma Impact Storyteller Award. So ways to tell stories that are engaging, whether it's a short film, whether it's a podcast. One of our innovators from last year, Maddie Freeman, actually made a 15-minute video with Jeff Orlowski, the director of the Social Dilemma. And she is very upfront talking about her own mental health struggles and having lost several friends and peers to suicide. And so, being right out there. And then when that right out there about the impact that social media has on one's self-esteem and can lead down this dangerous road to a suicide attempt or suicide. But I think when the voices come from youth themselves, it's very, very powerful.
And brilliant. Those are wonderful ideas.
Those are just a few. And I'm actually, and we're interviewing finalists. So, if we had talked 2 days from now, I would have had more to share with you.
Well, that was plenty, and they're wonderful ideas, and they're coming to solutions from on many different fronts. And I think there's real strength in kind of that grassroots kind of creativity.
Right.
But I also just love the idea of inventing their own kind of ideal social media universe and putting it out there to be understood and explored and hopefully adopted. That's really, that's exciting and inspiring.
Well, I mean, I think, and around the design, it's very hard to create an alternative social media platform on your own. Yeah. It just is. I mean, you're up against, the money of a nation. If you think about Meta or TikTok or Snapchat, but the designing of them and then using those designs as an advocacy tool to say to Instagram, hey, this is the way Instagram should look, is another tactic that they're taking.
Right. Well, let's talk about regulation a little, because after Frances Haugen's testimony, there was a lot of debate about regulating social media. And I wonder what kind of regulation do you think is necessary or would be effective in reining in the excesses of online harassment and hatred? You mentioned the legislation that was just in the news. I think it was in yesterday's paper, in fact, well, the Kids Online Safety Act connected with Richard Blumenthal and Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee. And I read a little bit in the newspaper about what was in that. So I wonder in general what you think would be helpful. And if you think what's in the Kids Online Safety Act would be moving us in the right direction if it were passed.
So I am a member of, again, I mentioned Fair Play, fairplay.org. They also have the Screen Time Action Network, and they have working groups. And one of the working groups is cyberbullying and online safety. And so the feeling is, I think if we had talked before Frances Haugen's testimonies, regulation was even a bigger long shot. And so the really exciting part is that there is now movement and awareness around this. And I think around legislation, realizing that child safety is a definite way in. A little harder around data privacies. So the child online safety, how do we create safer platforms? How do we create a safer digital world for children? We have legislation in the UK. They have a design code that they are beginning to implement. They are also pushing through online legislation. I think one of the issues with the current child online safety is that it puts a lot on parental controls, but not, still too much onus on parents and not enough on the actual design. So I think the feeling is it's a start, but not all encompassing enough. But I do think the other really exciting thing is to see the number of youth committed to participating in this push for regulation. And so I think that's very exciting. And the other aspect I think is very exciting and will lead into regulation as AI and machine learning and the metaverse become bigger presences, is the number of youth studying AI ethics. And that as a field of study, and a lot of computer science students. There's another organization, All Tech is Human, and David Polgar runs that, and they have college ambassadors. But when I continue, creating the digital technical world that is ethical and that is human and one we want to live in. So I think that's another avenue that we will see especially as Gen Z grows older and moves into more influential spaces as lawyers and legislators. That we met with 7 of our youth advocates, presented their different advocacy to Senator Markey's office. And the aide they were speaking with, well, she was 23, right? So this is her issue as well. And I think that was also very exciting for the youth to see. They talked about ways that they could get involved, what kind of letter writing campaigns work, picking up the phone and calling, seeing, well, I would probably be talking to a peer in different legislators' offices. So I think I'm very hopeful about it. I don't think we can wait for it. And I think that's why these awareness campaigns and educating youth is so critical, because until they change and until the harmful algorithms and the ways the platforms are designed, there is the other side of having youth educate and raise awareness on how to use them safely. And I will give you one example of that. Youth who, Chloe spoke about, she has her personal Instagram account, and that makes her feel one way when she's on it. But she also has another account, and I always get it wrong, but it's mentality masterpiece. And if we put this, I'll send you a link of different things. But she said, but when she's putting messages out there on her Instagram account about ways to feel better about yourself and affirmations and you matter, she feels better. So interesting. So interesting that she spends much less time on her personal Instagram account and more on her positive one, that, the one. And I think the other thing that youth are really talking about is how are we consuming social media and what are we creating on it, and how we can really create good, and the whole Tech for Good movement.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you shared that story. It makes sense when you think about it, that if you're tapping into the compassionate, altruistic parts of yourself, which you're doing when you're talking to people about how to feel better, you're strengthening those aspects of your inner life. And of course, it's going to make you feel gratified by what you're doing because you're contributing to making a world that is more based on character and intrinsic values rather than more superficial, algorithmically driven metrics of popularity or self-worth or what your body's supposed to look like. So that's brilliant. Thanks. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. And it starts to address then one final question I wanted to ask you, which is that these are, the problems with cyberbullying and online hatred, and there's a lot of factors that contribute to it, but it is basically young people bullying other young people. And I had wanted to ask you what kind of offline educational or cultural intervention do you think we might need to create and encourage greater civility and compassion? Now, your story just started to answer that, but I wonder if you have other thoughts about, as a culture and as a society, what we need to nurture in ourselves and in our culture so that we are less vulnerable to these kinds of online divisiveness and hatred and bullying and cruelty.
Yeah, I think widespread, it really in schools is the place. I do know, we have another youth group called the Log Off Movement, and they have a character education program that deals specifically around these issues and around the social media. And so as they connect with educators and share these, that's one way in. I think it's a really difficult situation because so much of it is under the radar. I mean, I've actually talked to students in schools who say, if we don't have access to our social media in school, when we could be cyberbullied, but have to deal with it at home alone, right? I mean, I think there's the more open conversation there can be around them. I mean, I think the other harm that we haven't even really talked about is not peer-to-peer, but is the sexual predators and the calling out that happens to many young people of being approached on social media by adults, right? And so that aspect as well. I mean, how do we negate that occurrence? And I think one of the advocacies we had were students coming together and pushing back on Instagram for kids and saying, no Instagram for kids. So that is one way to encourage more civility, is not to increase the engagement on the platforms. But I really think around cyberbullying, it's education, it's the stand up, the upstander, encouraging that. But it's a really hard thing to see when you're watching adults cyberbully each other, politicians, right? And so I think that is the hope of many of the youth that we work with, that they are going to create a kinder, more empathic, healthy, safe digital world, sort of one step at a time.
Yeah. And more power to them.
Absolutely.
I often think I just can't wait for the younger generations to be old enough to vote, to run for office.
They're doing
and get down to work.
Amazing things. So, and when they come together and create organizations as well, it's really powerful.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's just wonderful to hear about all the work you're doing and all the work all of your affiliates are doing. So, Susan. Well, Susan, just to close, and how can people learn more about the projects of LookUp.Live? How can young people participate, and what can parents or other adults do to help out?
Well, I mean, our website is LookUp.Live. Right there. And I think also reaching out to me, Susan, at LookUp.Live. We offer these grants, and in each of these teams that receives a grant receives a mentor and becomes involved in our leadership lab. Our leadership lab is for all of our youth advocates and different branches. We're really building out the advocacy branch. So lawyers, legislators, any adult allies who would like to get involved, youth who would like to get involved. The leadership lab used to be more geared towards our social innovators, towards the teams that we give grants to, but we realized there are so many youth out there with campaigns and ideas that we really want to include all of them. So I would say, check out our website, but also reach out to me, because we're in this real expansion mode right now. We have an event on February 25th with David J. of the Center for Humane Technology, who's going to really outline the landscape around humane technology, ways youth can get involved, sort of creating this expansive network to that. And you can get involved with that, again, by reaching out to me. We also have a LinkedIn, LookUp.Live. So I think those are probably the straight, clear ways.
Right. Great. LookUp.Live. Susan at LookUp.Live if you want more information. Susan, I can't thank you enough. It's been revelatory to talk to you and inspiring to talk to you. Because, you have to understand the depth and the scope of the problem before you can really generate ideas that will address in an effective way how to reverse course. And what's really encouraging and inspiring about talking to you is you clearly understand the depth and the extent of the problem, but you've also built a network of people, including significantly young people who understand social media probably better than anyone, who are now busily working, creating solutions and alternatives. And it's just very inspiring and encouraging to learn about the work that you're doing and the work that all of your affiliates and the young people that you're working with, the leadership that you've been cultivating. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because, I forget, there's one more group, our Youth Leadership Council, and that's primarily high school students, although we've expanded it. It used to be Teen Leadership Council, now it's youth, because we have our high school seniors saying, do we have to leave? We said, no, so that's, that's another group. And I think, I think knowing that, the audience to know that it's hard work to be a youth advocate in this field, because the draw, I mean, that's the social circles are on these platforms. And so how to use them better, not use them, is a real push, and a real focus. So I working with the youth is just what makes me get up in the morning, right? I mean, I just love working with them, love hearing their ideas, their energy, their optimism. Because if we just got mired in the harms and the problems, I mean, it's heavy stuff. But I'm very, very hopeful about this generation that is really tackling and using these social platforms for social good and social change.
Using social platforms for social good. We'll end on that note.
Great.
And also that it's heavy stuff, but you're bringing light to it, which is important and powerful. Thank you. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and your knowledge and your advocacy with us. I really appreciate it. So thank you, Susan.
Thanks.
And thanks everybody for watching today. I hope you'll join us next Thursday at 9 on Channel 9 for the morning show. If you missed any part of today's show, it'll be available for viewing on Port Media's YouTube channel playlist for the morning show at ncmhub.org. Each show will also air on WJOP FM 96.3 on Friday at 8 a.m. and the following Tuesday at 4 p.m. and Wednesday at 3 p.m. And it'll also be available as a podcast on the SoundCloud. Just go to ncmhub.org and click on the cloud icon in the upper right-hand corner. That's it for today, everybody. See you next week. Bye, Susan. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care now.
Thank you.